right? So these are the things that are done by assembler during two passes. So pass one will perform the address assignment, save the values, and perform processing of assembler directive. And pass two will assemble the instruction, generate data values defined by byte or word, and process the assembler directives that are not performed during pass one. And finally, it will write the object program, right? So in order to perform these tasks, our assembler is going to use certain data structures. We had seen that it uses three different data structures in hand. One of them is the op tab or the operation table. The second one is the sim tab or the symbol table. So these two tables are actually used in order to store the operation code and to store the labels. So operation table exclusively stores the mnemonic operation codes, and that will be used by our assembler to perform the translation into the machine language equivalent. And symbol table is used to store the value of addresses that are going to be assigned to the labels. So one more data structure is used, which is called as the location counter. So it's a variable that is actually used in address assignment. So we can consider it like a pointer, which will be used in order to perform the address assignment during pass one. So whenever we come across a label, the value of the location counter is going to be the address that is assigned to that particular label. So when it comes to the operation table, we had seen that along with operation codes and its machine language equivalent, it also contains instruction format and its length. Now this is required when we want to verify whether the instruction is a valid instruction or not. And of course, it will also help us during address assignment by looking into the value of length. Basically, during pass one, optab is used to look up and validate the operation code, and during pass two, it is used to perform the translation. And it is actually implemented as an hash table, as we had seen, because we are interested in retrieving or looking up the values more often than performing insertion or deletion in case of operation table. So when it comes to symbol table, it stores the value of the label and the address assigned to it. But along with that, it can also contain certain flags to indicate error conditions. So it also stores the labels type and length. Now, this is also essential when we are performing address assignment. And how symbol table is used during pass one is obviously it will be used to enter the values along with their addresses. And during pass two, the same values are going to be looked up and used in order to assemble the instruction. Now, just like operation table, even the symbol table is implemented using a hash table. And the major operations that are expected from this hash table is, of course, entry, insertion. Deletion is not done. It is rarely done, but insertion and search is the major operations that are expected from this hash table implementation. So we also looked into the algorithm of our pass one assembler. So this was the algorithm for pass one assembler. So the process I have already explained. So just a second. Right. So what is the process, right? So we know that our program begins with the start assembler directive and it ends with the end assembler directive. So when I read the first line, obviously the first line may contain the start assembler directive. So the first part of our algorithm is for processing the start assembler directive. So we will begin by reading the first input line. So expecting that the first input line is having a start assembler directive, we will move on with our algorithm with the following code. So if opcode is equal to start. So if I come across a start assembler directive, what is it that we are supposed to do during pass? So there will be some information that will be provided. Like for example, the operand field will contain the starting address of the program, and the left-hand side or the label field will contain the name of the program. So we are interested in getting the operand value, which serves as our starting address. So First, we will save the operand value as the starting address. We will initialize its value to location counter. So for example, if there is 1000 here, then I know that my program will start at 1000. So location counter value is set to 1000. If there is 2000, then location counter value is set to 2000, right? So once this line is processed, or once I got the starting address, I got what I actually needed. So I'll write the line to an intermediate file and I'll read the next input line. Now there is certain case when you may not find the start assembler directive. So in that case, what will happen is we will assume that the program will start at address 0. So therefore, if opcode is not found, then we have an else part here. So we'll initialize the location counter value to 0. Okay. So the next part of the program is obviously the processing of the remaining statements, and we know that the remaining statements are going to be present until the end assembler directive. So that's why we have an while statement here. So the while statement here, is saying while opcode not equal to end, means what? Until I come across the end assembler directive, I will do the following, right? So what is it that we are supposed to do? So we need to observe what is there until the end assembler directive. Okay. So of course we know that we have the label part, we have the opcode part, and we have the operand part, or the operand, or the label part, not label operand and the label opcode and the operand part. So in the opcode part and the label part, we will find labels and the opcode. So we need to check whether any label is present or not, or any label is already present in the symbol table or not, and whether the opcode is valid or not. Okay, so these are the two things that we are going to do. Now, along with that, your program can also contain comment lines. So those comment lines are supposed to be ignored. So that's why until I come across the end assembler directive, if it is not a comment line, then only we are going to process. If not, then we are not going to consider. Okay, how do we identify a comment line? A comment line is identified by a dot. Okay, dot followed by anything written is considered as a comment line, right? Okay, so when I start processing a line, first I will come across the label part. Okay, so if there is a symbol present in the label part, then what I need to check whether that symbol has already been entered or not. So I will search the symbol table for the label. So if it is already there, then what does it mean? It means that we are trying to enter a duplicate value. So we will set the error flag and we'll indicate that it's a duplicate symbol. So if it's not there, then it's a new symbol that we have already come across. So we will insert the label along with the current value of the location counter, okay, into the symbol table. So this will enter the label or the variable or the constant, whatever it is, along with its assigned address into our symbol table. Okay. So once I'm done with the label, what is the next part? The next part is the opcode. So for opcode, I need to verify the following. So if it is an opcode, right? So this is the first case. If it is an opcode, I need to verify whether it is a valid opcode or not. Okay. Second thing is, if it is not an opcode, then it can be an assembler directive. So if it is an assembler directive, then I need to check which assembler directive it is, whether it is byte or whether it is word or whether it is reserve byte or whether it is reserve word. So I need to verify what assembler directive it is, and accordingly I need to perform the process. Okay, let us consider the first case. So if it is an opcode, then I will search the opcode for I'll search the optab for opcode. So if it is found, then obviously I know that it is a valid opcode and it's a valid instruction. So I need to increment the value of the location counter which I will do by adding 3 to it. Now, why I'm adding 3 to it? Because I know that in SIC standard model, every instruction size is 3. Okay, and of course, I'll get that information from the operation table, because operation table stores the information about the instruction. Okay, so it will say that this instruction is of this length, so I can add the appropriate length. So the appropriate length here is 3 bytes, so add 3 to the location counter. Okay, so if it is not an opcode, valid opcode, then I come here in the else part, I will set an error flag, and I'll indicate that it is an invalid operation code that you are trying to perform, or the instruction contains an opcode which is not recognized by the assembler, right? So now come to the second part. So if it is not an opcode, then obviously it should be an assembler directive, correct? So what assembler directive can be? There can be word, there can be reserve word, there can be reserve byte, and there can be byte. So we know what we did with each case, right? So same thing has been reflected here. So if opcode is equal to word, then we will add 3 to the location counter. Okay. If it is a reserve word, then how many words has to be reserved? So 3 into whatever the operand value is. Okay. Next one is reserve byte. Okay, so reserve byte is how many number of bytes are asked to be reserved in the operand field. So that many number of bytes or that many number of values we are going to add it to location counter. Okay, and last is byte. Opcode is equal to byte. So for a byte, we need to first find the length of the constant in bytes, because as I said, for constant can vary depending upon what you have specified. And then we are going to add the length to the location counter. And in other words, whatever amount of bytes are required for a constant, so that many number of bytes we are going to add to location counter, right? So we have handled both the cases, when it is an opcode and when it is an assembler directive. So if it is neither of this, then obviously we have already have an else part where we set the error flag indicating that it's an invalid operation code. Okay, and after processing that particular line, we will write that particular line onto the intermediate file, and we'll read the next input line. Okay, now like this, we will process every single instruction that is present in our program until the end assembler directive. Okay, so when I come across the end assembler directive, the while loop is going to turn false, and we are going to come out of this particular while loop. So what happens when we come out of that while loop? So this is the later part. So where we are going to write the last line that we have processed to the intermediate file. Now this intermediate file contains some extra information from pass1 as well, and it also has already neglected the comment lines, if any. So we'll save the value of the program length. How do we calculate? I've already explained. So starting address minus the current value of location counter. So for example, as I said already, if your location counter length is 2039, and if the starting address of the program is 1000, then the length of the program is going to be around 1039. Okay, so this is how the length of the program is calculated, and that's the end of pass one. Okay. All right. Okay. So that was pass one. All right. So we have calculated. Sorry. So after calculating the program length, we write it, and we save the value for pass two, and that would be the end of pass 1 of our assembler. Okay. Now let us look into pass 2. Any doubts in pass 1? Any doubts in pass 1? Okay. So if there is no doubt in pass 1, then let us look into pass 2 of our algorithm. Once again, another important algorithm for our assembler. So we remember that we have generated the object program in pass 2, right? So the same process is followed here, whatever we had done during the assembly process and generation of the object program process. So once again, this is a lengthier algorithm. So the middle part, we have kept it in the second slide. Okay, so before going to that, let us look at what we do at the beginning, right? So first we start with pass 2. We read the first input line. Once again, this is an intermediate file that we are reading, which contains information from pass 1. Okay. So if we come across the start assembler directive, then obviously we have to take something from it, because we need information to write the header record, right? So we begin by writing the listing line and read the next input line, because already we have processed what is required from the start assembler directive. So we will use that information to write the header record of our object program. Now why we are reading here is maybe we need the length of the we need the length of the program, which you have already calculated during pass 1. We need the starting address of the program, and we need the name of the program, right? So all those things needs to be written in header record. So obviously that's the purpose of reading or having this part of the program. Okay, so we read the intermediate file, get the information that we require, and write the header record to the object program. So once we get the uh, header record done, then we have to get the text records, right? Or we have to initialize the text records. So we will start by initializing the first text record. So how do we start by initializing the first text record? We write T, or we begin with having a T in the first place. So assuming that we have already written the header record. Okay, so now we shall see how we write the text record in the first place. Now once again, where are the object code? Obviously it is present in the program itself until the end assembler directive. So while opcode not equal to end. Okay, once again, we don't process any comment lines from the intermediate file if there are any left out. So I believe majority of the time they will be eliminated during pass 1, but however, for being on the safer side, I kept this part. So first we shall start by searching the op tab for opcode. Okay, so first we need to perform the assembly, then we need to write the assembled instruction into the text record. Okay, so we have already written the T part, so remaining part we are supposed to write. Okay, so how we are writing? So first we are assembling the instruction. Now what I need to assemble the instruction? I need the opcode and I need the operand, or its machine equivalent is what I want. Okay, like for example, if I have an instruction like STL RETADR, then first I need to know that STL is 14 and RETADR is 1039. So once I generate this instruction, then I will write this instruction in my text record. Okay, so this is the process. So let us look into it. So first we will search the operation table for opcode. Okay, we'll search the operation table for opcode. So if it is found, then we know that it's a valid instruction. So now what we do is we now look into the operand field. Okay, if there is a symbol in the operand field, then we need to check whether that symbol is also present or not. And where it is present, obviously it is present in symbol table. So we'll search the symbol table for operand. So what are the chances? Chances are that it may be found or it may not be found. Okay, like for example, in some cases, this might be a possibility. Like STL, RET, ADR is there. So STL is a valid opcode. So we enter the if statement. Now there is an operand in the operand field or lay symbol in the operand field. Now we look up the symbol table for this. So obviously it is a valid symbol, so it will be found. So when it is found, we'll store the symbol value as the operand address. So whatever value is there, we will take it and we'll consider it as the operand address. Okay. Now there are certain times when we have entered an invalid label and it is not found in the symbol table. So in that case, what we'll do is we'll store 0 as the operand address, but we will indicate that it is an error by setting the error flag. Okay. Now remember that there are certain instructions that may not have any operand. Okay, like for example, rsub. Rsub did not have any operand. Okay, so in that case, what we'll do, we will store 0 as the operand address. Got it? Okay. So first we will check the opcode in the operation table. If it is valid, we will move ahead. We will check whether something is present in the operand field or some symbol is present in the operand field. If it is present, we will look up the symbol table. We will consider its value recorded as the address. So if there is a symbol, but it is not present in symbol table means we will put 0 and we will set an error flag. Okay. Suppose if there is nothing in the operand field, then we will set the address as 0000 and then we will assemble the instruction. Okay. Now, irrespective of whether it's the first case or the second case, we will assemble the object code instruction. What do you mean by assemble? Assemble means putting together the opcode along with its operand. Okay. So this will be done in this part of the algorithm, right? So if it is not an instruction, then what it can be? It can be an what is that? Assembler directive, right? So that's the latter part, right? So if the opcode, if in the opcode section of my program, if in the opcode section of my program, I find a byte, okay? If I find a byte, or if I find a word, what I have to do? So I have to generate the object code for them also, right? For example, we had, I think, and EOF, right? So EOF X something, sorry, C EOF, something like this was there, and maybe 0 word 0, something like this was there. Okay, so if opcode is equal to byte or a word, then what we are going to do? First, we are going to convert the constant to the object code, right? So what is EOF? EOF was 4F, 45, 4F, 46. Similarly, 0 is nothing but 0. So we have converted the constant to the object code. Okay. So irrespective of the first case or the second case, like in first case, let me assume I got this 1014101009. In the second case, let us assume that I got 4545 4F 46. Okay, irrespective of what I have got, I need to put them in the text record. Okay, so first I will check whether this will fit into my text record or not. Okay, that's the criteria, because I told you that there is a limitation on how many number of text records can be there in a particular, sorry, how many number of instructions can be there in a text record. So we will check that particular part here. So if the object code will not fit into the current text record, what we are supposed to do? We are supposed to open up a new text record. So we will write the previous text record to the object program, which is final, and we will initialize a new text record. Now, this was the first statement that I considered. So obviously this case will not come here. So if that is not the case, then what we'll do, we will add the object code to the text record. Okay, so with the necessary information. So we already know what are the information that are contained in the text record. So we'll keep on adding the instructions, assembled instructions, as long as this particular text record cannot take it. Okay, so once it is filled up, we will write it to the object program and we will initialize a new text record. So this is what we are going to do in this part of the program. Okay, so once we are done, we will write the listing line and we will read the next input line. So now this process will go on until what? Until I come across the end assembler directive. Okay, so when I come across the end assembler directive, we are almost done with generating the object program. So when I come out of that while loop, the last text record is supposed to be completed. So that part we'll write here. So write the last text record to the object program. So once all the text records are completed, what is remaining? The end record. So we already have the information regarding end record. So we'll write that to the object program and we'll write the last listing line. Okay. So this will end our pass2 algorithm of the assembler. Okay. So this is how the algorithm actually works. Right. So pass1 and pass2, very important. Both the algorithms are very, very important. So asked many times in examinations. If you do have any doubts, then you can ask now, or else I can continue. Any doubts up to this point? No doubts? Which means I have explained very well. Of course, if you have followed that process of assembly and what we had done, so same thing has been listed here. Even though the algorithm looks a little bit large, it's very easy to understand. So there are part by part handling of things. So if you look into the algorithm, you will be able to understand. Okay. So right, if you don't have any doubts, obviously we can move ahead. Right. So it was quite simple for us to assemble the instruction for SIC standard model. Okay. But what if the program, assembly level language program that we are supposed to implement is a SIC bar XC program, right? So now, are there any changes? Yes, of course, there are going to be changes with regard to the process of assembling an SIC bar XC program when compared with SIC standard model. Now, why the process would actually change is because there are certain features that are supported by SIC standard model, which are not supported in SIC bar XC. Okay. So who is 4 PM 18 CS 018? Can you just erase that whatever you have drawn? Okay. Right. So whenever we look into SIC, just a second. Right. So whenever we look into that SIC bar HC features, we saw that in terms of the instruction format and in terms of the addressing mode, there are few differences, right? So one of the major difference being that there are 4 different types of instruction formats that are supported on SIC bar XC, and because of these 4 instruction formats, and of course the memory size has also been increased. Because of that, we have got different types of addressing modes. We had seen that there are indirect addressing mode, had seen that there are immediate addressing mode, had seen that there are base relative extended format, and also there is support for register to register instructions. Okay, so all these things needs to be considered when we are trying to assemble a program that is written for SIC bar HC. Okay, now there are certain things that I would like you to observe here. So when I show you an SIC bar XC program, there are certain things that you need to observe. Okay, like for example, if I see an at, okay, one thing that we observed in our which one SIC standard model program was something like this, right? So whenever the instruction is something like this, stch buffer comma x, then what does it mean? It means that it is using an indexed addressing mode. So we have to set the value of x to 1. Okay. Now, just like this, we are supposed to observe few instructions that will give away the information regarding what addressing mode or what type of an instruction there. Okay. So this observation is very, very important. So do concentrate. So whenever you see an at in the instruction, okay, so remember that this instruction is using an indirect addressing mode. Okay, so whenever there is an at, so it means that that particular instruction is using an indirect addressing mode. So what do you mean by that, or what we should do when we are using an indirect addressing mode? We have to set the n bit to 1. Okay, remember this. Next one, whenever we see an hash, what does it mean? We already know that it's using a immediate addressing mode. Okay, so when it comes to base or PC relative addressing mode, you can't identify it by just looking at the instruction. So we will only know when we are assembling that particular instruction. Okay, but however, whenever we are supposed to use the base relative addressing mode, then before using that, we have to make some initial we have to do some initial things. So that will be including specifying the base assembler directive. Okay, so this is one more assembler directive now. So whenever you see base, okay, then it may indicate that you are using a base relative addressing mode, or the following instructions may be using the base relative addressing. Okay, or we are doing something that is related with base relative addressing. Okay, so that is one thing. So you can look out for this particular assembler directive in your program. Okay, whenever an instruction has a plus at the beginning, okay, whenever an instruction has a plus at the beginning, then that indicates an extended format instruction. Okay, it indicates an extended format instruction. So you know that e value has to be set to 1, and we are using the format 4. Okay, and we're using the format 4 addressing mode. Lavanya, can you mute? Okay, right. So how do you identify a register to register instruction? Obviously, it will contain registers as operands. Got it? Okay, so with that in mind, let us now look into this program. Okay, so whatever has been marked, right? So can you observe and tell what are the things that are highlighted here? I did not ask you to put profile picture. Nobody has put profile picture. Okay, some of them have. So obviously there are so many who haven't even in this, but of course you might have installed it today. So maybe in the next class I will ask the question for those who haven't put profile picture. Anyways, so what are the things that are highlighted here? So one thing that you can observe here is that we have specified 0 as the starting address. Okay, earlier in our program we had put 1000, but here we have specifically put 0. Okay, now all the SIC bar XC program, they would actually start with address 0. Okay, now there is a reason for this. So whenever I put a starting address of 0, then it means that it is a relocatable program. Okay, so it's an relocatable program. Are you able to see the screen properly?
No, sir.
All right, just a second. Okay, I guess now it should be visible.
Yes, sir.
Right, so all the SIC bar XC program will begin with 0, starting address of 0. Okay, so that would make them a relocatable program. This is a concept that we need to discuss later, but just remember that every relocatable program starts with a starting address of 0. Okay, so obviously location counter value will be initialized to 000 as we did earlier. Okay, other things that we observe here. So hash length is used. So some sort of immediate addressing has been used in this instruction. Okay, you can observe here plus jsub. So plus means what? Extended instruction. So this is a format 4 instruction. This is a format 4 instruction. Okay, now hash 0, once again immediate addressing mode. So plus jsub. So once again a extended format instruction. So hash 3, once again immediate addressing, plus jsub, extended format instruction. See here at retadr. So we have seen an at. So whenever I see an at symbol, it means it is using an indirect addressing mode, right? Okay, look further. See, some of the instruction are using registers, correct? X is a register, A is a register, S is a register. So what does it mean? It means that these are register instructions or instructions that uses the register. So they may be format 2 instructions. Okay, so plus LDT, obviously it's an extended format instruction. See here, compare A comma S. So A and S are register. So this is a register to register instruction. TIXRT, this is a register to register instruction, right? So look further. Okay, so of course here there are no markings. Try to find out. So what is the first instruction? First instruction, it can be a register to register instruction because X is used. Okay, which means that it is a format 2 instruction, right? Any other changes that you see here. We are using a instruction which is using indexed addressing mode, correct? TIXRT, which is a register instruction. Okay, anything else? No, right? So these observations are very, very important. So what type of instruction they are and what format it is using and what addressing mode they are using. So if you get that idea, then assembling the SIC bar XC program becomes much more easier. Okay. Now the process of assembly is similar to what we have done with SIC standard model. The only difference would be in assembling the object code. Okay, like for example, if I had an instruction in the SIC standard model, okay, assuming that it's a valid opcode and a valid label, all I did during assembly was write them together. So for example, STL was 14, return address was 1039, correct? So I just did this, but this is not going to happen in SIC bar HC. It is not this easy. Okay, so whenever you are assembling the instruction, you need to look into two things. One of the thing is, what is the instruction format that is currently being considered for the instruction, and second thing is, what is the addressing mode, what is the addressing mode that is being used. So these two things we need to get familiar with before we perform the assembly process. Okay, so here there are some clues for you to identify instruction. Okay, normally a PC or a base relative instruction that uses these addressing modes would look something like this. Okay, it would look like a normal instruction. So whether it's a PC or a base, that you need to find out, and you will only find that out when we expand that instruction and we assemble it. Okay, remember that by default it is going to be PC relative addressing. Okay, it's going to be PC relative addressing mode. If it cannot be assembled using PC, then we will go for base relative addressing. Okay, that is one thing. So how do I identify an instruction that uses indirect addressing mode? It will appear something like this. So how do we identify an instruction that uses immediate addressing mode? It will look something like this. Extended format, it will look something like this. Indexed addressing mode, it will look something like this. Register to register instruction, as I said, it will have register as their operands. Got it? Okay, and of course, extended format instruction, we know, begin with a plus sign. Okay, so if you have understood this, then let us just straight away jump into the assembly process. Okay, so let us do the address assignment first. I believe I've got 5 minutes. Okay, so I've just taken a part of the program to perform the assembly process. Okay, so what is the first part? First part is to assign the address, correct? So during pass 1, what do we do? We will assign the address. So address assignment is done. So how do we do the address assignment? We will use the variable location counter. We will initialize its value to the starting address, and then we keep on incrementing, correct? So we'll do the same thing here, right? But as I said, we need to be careful and very observant regarding what is the type of instruction that we are looking at. Okay, so let us start. So what is the starting address that has been specified? Starting address is 0000. Okay, so I'll just put 0000. So I'll initialize the location counter value to 0. So location counter is now currently pointing to this location, the first instruction in my program. Got it? Okay. Now just observe here what type of instruction it is, correct? It's a normal instruction, right? So it's a normal instruction. So normal instruction means there are two things. So one, it is a format 3. When an instruction looks normal, it is a format 3 instruction, and addressing mode can be either PC or base. Okay, addressing mode can be either PC or base. So if it is a format 3 instruction, okay, what value I have to add to location counter in order to find the address of the next instruction. What is the size of format 3 instruction? Three bytes, correct? Format 3 is 3 bytes in length. Format 1 is 1 byte in length. Format 2 is 2 bytes in length. Format 4 is 4 bytes in length. Okay, so do remember this. So I have an instruction at 0, which looks like a normal instruction. So obviously a normal instruction is format 3. So format 3 means 3 bytes. So the next address will be present at 0003. Okay, so which is LDB length. Okay, now once again, LDB hash length is a format 3 instruction, but because there is an hash here, it uses an immediate addressing mode. Okay, but I'm not worried about that at this point of time because I'm just assigning the address. Okay, so I just need to know what type of instruction it is. Okay, I will not worry about the addressing mode as of now, but of course I need to know which addressing mode it is using, but I'm only worried about the instruction format. So this is a format 3 instruction. Okay, so this is a format 3 instruction, right? So format 3 means, once again, it is a 3 byte instruction. So the next instruction will be at 0006. Okay, now I did not write the address for this because what is this? This is nothing but the assembler directive. Okay, so for an assembler directive like base, we will not generate the object code. Okay, so this is an exception that you need to remember. So the next instruction is at 0006. Okay, so at 006, look at the instruction. What type of instruction it is? Can anyone answer? There is a plus present. So when there is a plus present, it's an extended format instruction, right? Somebody answered, good. So it's an extended format. Extended format means what? Format 4. Okay. So what is the size of format 4? 4 bytes. So how much you are supposed to add? 4. So this will become 0006 plus 4 is 10. So it is A. Okay. So LDA length is present at address 000A because the previous instruction is an extended format instruction and its size will be 4 bytes. Got it? Okay. Now once again, observe, this is a simple instruction. So it will be 3 bytes. So A is 10, 11, 12, 13. So B, C, D. So at D, it is present. Okay, 000 D. So this instruction is present at 000 D. Now once again, this is a immediate addressing mode using instruction, but it is a format 3 instruction. So D plus 3. D is how much? B, C, D. E, F, 0. Okay, so 0010, I believe. Is it correct? Yes. 0010 is where the instruction jump if equal to end fill is going to be located. Okay. Now once again observe, simple instruction, format 3, right? So obviously plus 3. So 0013 is where this one is present. Okay. Now I observe that there is a plus. So plus means obviously extended format. So 13 plus 4, it is 0017. Okay. So like this, if you keep on going, then you will reach the end. Okay. Of course, the processing of assembler directive is almost the same, which we have done in our SIC standard model. Only for the instruction, you can observe the change, right? So in SIC, we simply incremented the value of location counter by 3, correct? We simply incremented the value of location counter by 3. But here, there is a difference. So it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, or it can be 4. We need to observe what type of instruction is present, and then we need to increment the value. So majority of the time, it will be a 3-byte instruction format, but we need to observe for extended and other type of formats, whether it is format 1 or format 2 or format 4. Got it? So if you do this, then we will have the address assigned for our instruction. Okay, so I'll show you that address assignment. See here. So this is what we have done, right? Started with 0, correct? Started with 0, just forget about this line. It's not required. So started with 0. So simple instruction 0003 incremented by 3. Simple instruction 0006. Okay. Extended format 4. So 000 A. So simple instruction once again 3 added. Simple instruction 3 added. So extended format, right? So here we have an extended format. So 3 plus 4, 7, right? Then 001A plus 3, 001D. Once again, 3-byte, 3-byte. Okay, so here we have an extended format instruction. So 2, 6 plus 4. So 6 plus 4 is 10. So 002A return address. Okay, and then simple instruction. So 002D. EOF is once again 3 bytes. So D plus 3. Okay, 15. So 0030. Once again, reserve word 1. So 0033. Once again, reserve word 1. 0036. So buffer reserve byte 4096. So for 0036, we need to add 1000. So we'll get 1036. Means if I am assuming that this is the end of the program, right? So this is how the address assignment is going to be done for SIC bar XC program. Okay. Now remember, once again, address assignment is very, very important, because if the address is wrong, then whatever you assemble is going to be wrong. Okay. So this is one thing that you need to remember. So this is about the address assignment. Okay. So I will, maybe time is up. In the next session, I will discuss about how we assemble the object code. Okay. Now do not miss this session, because in the examination, nobody is going to ask you assembly process of SIC standard model. Okay. So you will be always asked the assembly process of SIC bar XC. So this part of how we are getting this object code is going to be very, very important. So do not miss this session. Okay. So just a second. So if you have any doubts, you can ask. So somebody asked me to explain pass 2 of the assembler. I will take the attendance. I will end the session. You can stay back, whoever wants to get the explanation of pass 2. Others can leave. Okay. So just wait for me to take the attendance. Just a second. Take the attendance. So 100 is the count. Once again, dear students, do add your profile picture, even in Zoom. Don't give any other information. Just add a profile picture, just for my reference. That's it. Okay. So that is one thing. Okay. I have taken the attendance. So students can leave. So those who want me to explain past 2 can stay back. Thank you, students.